Hi, I'm Nick Sonnenberg. I'm the author of the Wall Street Journal bestselling book, Come Up for Air, and the CEO of Leverage, a operational efficiency training and consulting firm. My mission in life is to help save you and the world millions and millions of hours by becoming more efficient, not just on an individual basis, but for an entire team or organization. On today's episode, we cover a lot, including a framework so that every person on your team can save over a full business day a week. We cover why your mess might be good for you as an individual, but might not make your team very efficient. And then we are also covering, this whole concept of a Swiss Army knife. And would you rather chop down a tree with a Swiss Army knife or a chainsaw? And in your business, what tools are you using as Swiss Army knives versus what would be the chainsaws? So stay tuned and buckle up because this was a very, very fascinating episode.
Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Nick Sonnenberg. He is a serial entrepreneur, Wall Street Journal best-selling author, guest lecturer for Columbia University. Guy's helped with some big organizations from Fortune 10 to Tony Robbins, to many startups and all kinds of things. He's the author of a brand new book called Come Up for Air. For 8 years, he was a high-frequency trader on Wall Street. And now his whole mission, his whole focus is on making us more efficient, more effective. And he's actually been able to show how you and I can really have an actual day more a week of being productive and actually have each of our team members do exactly the same. It's all based on these principles of Come Up for Air, which is C.P.R. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go in. We were talking about in part 1 of the show, we spoke a lot about what are some of the principles of C.P.R., what are some of the principles of laid out in the book. We talked a lot about, it's interesting, and you've heard me talk about this many times, that if you're in the problem solution business, and meaning you're solving people's problems, you're giving them a solution, that most often, if you're damn good at that, it's because it was your problem. It's because you had to suffer through that. And Nick talked about, having this 7-figure business, it was suddenly like out of nowhere is going to disappear if he doesn't do something and become a hell of a lot more efficient. And that's exactly what he did. And talked a lot about how that journey went and what it taught him about dealing with things for ourselves. One of the things we spoke a lot about, and it's an important thing, is how we, particularly here in the West, we're very driven towards our own efficiency, to our own, we want to score high. But if we don't work as a team and make the team score high, we're dead in the water, and it's going to cause us a lot of problems. And he talked about the importance of sacrificing for that and why that is important. So now we're going to come back into part 2 of the show, and I really want to dig into all kinds of things here, because I spoke about in the beginning, in part 1 of the show, about how my process is different than my wife's process, and Nick was talking about how that doesn't matter unless there's a crossover. So now we're going to come back into part 2 of the show, and I really want to dig into all kinds of things here, because I spoke about in the beginning, in part 1 of the show, about how my process is different than my wife's process, and Nick was talking about how that doesn't matter unless there's a crossover. So let's talk about, most of us in most organizations do have a crossover. So let's talk about the importance of documenting process, because for high creatives, that can feel like, I just do it. And for people who are very methodical, it's like, well, you just do this. And it's, So talk to us about the importance of doing it and how to help people who are the more high creative, who don't naturally do that process.
Yeah. Documenting and optimizing process is not something that most people wake up in the morning super excited to do, right? When you're given the option, could I come up with new marketing creative that's going to help us get new leads or close more sales? And then the alternative is, can I document, my process for, editing a podcast episode? What are you going to pick? Most people want to do the stuff that's going to, have more of an immediate impact. But if people are just completely focused on top line revenue activities and they're totally neglecting some of these more foundational things like documenting process, like rolling out a new system or cleaning up some operational debt, if it's 100% on top line and zero on the bottom line, you're going to hit a wall at some point, and maybe you've already done so, and this is resonating as you listen. But there will be a time where you hit an upper limit, you just can't grow anymore because you just have accumulated so much operational debt that most of your time is now spent putting out fires or dealing with stuff, that was originally built on duct tape and spit. So anytime you're working on something that you ideally never want to do again, right? That should be a trigger to yourself, like, what do I have to do or what do I have to put in place to get me on the path to never have to do it again? And 9 out of 10 times, the starting point of that path is to document how you're doing things. It's hard to get something off your plate if you can't train someone to do that activity for you. Or now you've got AI and automation, but still, the starting point, regardless if you're going to use AI, automation, or a human to get it off your plate, you need to document what it is or how you do it. It can't just be living inside of your head. So as an individual, that should be the motivation. You should document. Now, if you're listening right now and you're a manager or someone in the C-suite, right, the motivation is you don't want to have risk that if someone leaves, the moment that they leave, all the IP and all the information is in their head, and the moment they leave the door, it goes out with it, right? You want to retain as much value as possible if someone leaves, and the best way of doing that is to make sure that there's a brain dump in a place where everything can live, right? Not to mention, so there's the risk reduction side of it, like you don't want to be vulnerable. And it's not just the risk that someone leaves. By documenting things, you also reduce the risk of an error happening, with that person executing that process. There was a book called The Checklist Manifesto written by a surgeon. And what they found is when they started putting checklists in surgical rooms, the risk of surgical error went down by like 87% or something like that, right? So documenting things helps reduce the risk of error in the moment and reduces the risk that if someone leaves, you're not kind of stuck in a bad place because you don't know how payroll is done. One thing that I learned back from the days I was a high frequency trader, back then, there wasn't some of these fancy tools. So we had to go old school and write an email like, hey, this is how to trade my book or my algorithm. So before I left for my block leave, because as a trader, there's this thing called block leave where for 2 weeks every year, you're forced to leave and go on vacation, right? So you had so many vacation days, but you had to take 10 consecutively, and you're blocked out. You can't come into the office. You can't check your email, nothing. You're completely blocked out. And it's a way to stress test the system and also make sure that you're not hiding any trades. And it was a fantastic exercise that we now do a variation of it at Leverage. And every year for 8 years that I was a high frequency trader, when I came back, there's always an improvement to how my book traded or my algorithm traded, right? Because fresh eyes spark innovation, right? And so what's that other phrase? It's hard to see the label when you're inside the jar. Even if I'm so expert and I created the algorithms, by having someone look at it from new perspective, they're able to find, it doesn't need to be a complete change or like
maybe a minor tweak that makes a massive difference.
It could just be a tweak, but still, like, tweaks add up. And so every year there was always some improvement, bigger or small. And so that's an interesting exercise that I would encourage everyone to listen to. Have a role rotation in your company. Maybe every quarter, if you follow, say, OKRs for goal setting, objectives and key results, I'm sure that you probably have some around revenue and profit and new clients and stuff. Set some for operational efficiency. Maybe it's a certain number of hours a week you want people to save, or a new tool that you want to improve on, or a process that you want to stress test. Whatever it is, I would encourage you to have some OKRs around making your company or team or organization more efficient, and something that you might want to do a certain number of times a year. It doesn't have to be every process. Like, you don't want this to be so annoying and such a huge cost investment that it's not worth it. But, there's certain processes that are worth more than others. Like, payroll is an important one.
Yeah.
If one person knows how to do payroll, they're a bottleneck and it's not documented anymore. What are they going to do if they quit or get hit by a bus or go on vacation for a long time or something happens? You don't want to be vulnerable. So I would analyze your vulnerabilities. What are some things that really impact the business, right? Either top line or bottom line, and focus on those and start documenting those. And it's not just going to help you reduce the risk, right? And again, risk of someone leaving or something happening in the process itself, but you also might find, you certainly will find opportunities to improve.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, how often have we heard of somebody who said, oh, our top XYZ, whatever it might be, person left, and now we're screwed because we don't even know how they did what they did, right? And that's so common.
If I had a nickel for every time I ask someone, why do you do this? And then the answer is, oh, well, we've just always done it like that. And like, there's just no good reason. It's like, well, just stop. Like, your business has changed in the last 6 years. Like, why are you still doing that thing?
Well, there's a great story of a mother teaching her daughter how to make a Christmas ham. And she's making this Christmas ham. You know the story?
They cut off the edges because the oven was
because and she says, well, why do we do that? She says, well, I don't know, my mother taught me. So they phone grandma, why do you do this? Well, my mother taught me. It's great. Well, great grandma's still alive, let's ask her. Oh, I don't do that. Yeah, you do. I watched you do it. No, I did that when you were a kid because the ham wouldn't fit we didn't have a big enough roasting pan.
Yeah.
I'm like, that how much are we cutting off or doing because it was the way it was done, rather than stopping and saying, is this efficient? Is this the best way for us to do it? But it's the way we've always done it, and we just love familiarity. We're lazy.
I'm going to just take a note, put it in the right place, right? So I'm putting this note into Asana right now because that's my to-dos, and I have a to-do that I'm going to add that story to my talks that I give when I have to talk about documenting processes. Story of ham. All right, now I won't forget it because I put it exactly where it belongs and won't get lost, and I'll be able to retrieve that later very quickly.
Well, see, I'm gonna learn that from you because I've got 10 million of those good things floating around in here, which are very good at coming to me, I got to say, because I speak so much and because I've done this for so long, very good at coming to me on the fly. But it would be kind of nice to know, to not just hope that my psychic powers are working.
Yeah, no, it's all about retrieval, right? Like, you
exactly. And that's the thing I really like about your stuff, is that it's about retrieval, right? Not memory pegs, of a memory strategy of teaching yourself memory pegs, although that's useful, but actually being able to retrieve what you want, when you want, how you want.
Well, we were having a great discussion in part one, which I'd encourage you to listen to if you just decided to skip and come straight to part two. But we were talking about principles, and another principle is, it's a quote that I heard from David Allen, which is, your brain is for having ideas, not holding ideas. And that is another fundamental kind of core principle with all this stuff. Like, in order for you're a creative person, and you probably have thousands more ideas, and they're probably really good ideas, better than the average person's ideas. But it's hard to come up with breakthrough ideas if your brain is cluttered with chaos and you're just trying to hold on. Did I buy the carrots from the grocery store? Did I respond to that client? Did I do this right? It's hard to keep it all in your head. And if anything, the world's getting busier and busier. There's more and more every day. There's more distractions. There's new apps. There's new social media platforms. And so it's just becoming more and more imperative that we figure out strategies to be able to kind of have like a brain cleanse, so to speak, and brain dump this stuff so you can have a lighter brain, free up that brain space, and have even better ideas break through.
So I know you don't want this to be about tools, but that is an important factor.
Yeah.
So, somebody comes to me and says, oh, we do all our meetings in Slack. I'm like, oh, use this. And I'm like, oh, Christ, another thing I got to learn. So that is so if you've got this system running inside of your organization and you're an organization who works with other organizations who has their systems, then it becomes this massive overwhelm with these systems and tools and apps and shit. Guide us a little bit, please, Nick, before our head explodes, before there's a mess everywhere.
So I would say, kind of first step is to acknowledge that you have a Swiss Army knife problem, meaning you're using text and email to be your internal communication tools, your external communication, your internal communication, your project management. You're kind of using it. You got the Swiss Army knife that is solving kind of like 10 problems.
Mm-hmm.
And start trying to solve one problem at a time. Say your Swiss Army knife has 10 knives on it. How can you reduce it to 9 and then kind of get, a sharp axe for what is required with an axe? A lot of people like this idea of a Swiss Army knife because it's like one tool, but like if you went to the forest and you tried chopping down a tree, you could do it with a Swiss Army knife, but a chainsaw is going to do it much faster, right? Mm-hmm. So, Slack is like the chainsaw for internal communication, or Microsoft Teams. Asana or Monday, that's like a chainsaw for project management or work management. Coda, Notion, Confluence, those are like the chainsaws for your SOPs and your wiki. There's a lot of different ones, and you can't roll out all of these at the same time. So you have to really get clear kind of what problem do we want to solve? And let's, say there's 10 problems. How do we make the Swiss Army knife go from 10 knives to 9 and get the chainsaw for that one problem? And once that's working, now let's get that Swiss Army knife from 9 to 8 and get another chainsaw for another problem. So that's kind of the first thing that I would recommend. And then within that, different things are faster to roll out than others. And so, for example, everyone uses email. So if you're listening right now, you use most likely Outlook or maybe Gmail, right? Some people might use Apple Mail, but you're using one of those 2, maybe 3 for sure, yes. Right? Yeah. Everyone in business. Now, some of these other tools that I just mentioned, you might not have ever heard of. Some teams might use them, some might not. So in general, what I recommend is start optimizing kind of what you've already got. Everyone uses email. And so usually optimizing that tool, it's not a new tool. It's not like you have to learn new functionality or a whole new way of thinking. One of the most popular things that we do is we train teams on how to get to inbox 0 and use Outlook and Gmail properly. And as silly as it sounds, that is 3 to 5 hours a week back out of that full business day, just right there. The sheer kind of inefficiencies that we see, and we've done this with tens of thousands of people, it's just mind-boggling. And it's very quick. It's one of the quickest things to clean up, and it's one of the most impactful. And it's not a new tool to learn. It's just a new way of thinking about it, and a few changes to settings and ways that you use it, mindset things. People aren't using snoozing. They've got too many folders. They're not utilizing search. They have some settings that need to be optimized. And within a few hours, it can totally change your life. And then, there's other requirements for tools. Probably after that, you want to clean up, Slack or Microsoft Teams and use that for internal communication.
Right.
The best way to get to inbox 0, which doesn't mean you literally need 0 emails in your inbox, but say less than 20 or 30, it just means that you've got a grip on it and things, right. You're going to deal with it and nothing's going to slip through the cracks, and you're not going to reread the same thing or relook at the same thing 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
And so the best way to get to inbox 0 is email 0. So if you could remove all the stuff that's coming into your inbox and shift it to tools or those chainsaws that are built for purpose. So right. Internal communication goes into the right channel in Slack or Teams. Or if it's project related, it goes in your project management tool in the right project, with the right assignees and due dates and all that stuff, right? And yes, it does take a few extra seconds on the front end, because nothing will ever be faster than text or email. If you're trying to, if your argument is it's not as fast, then that means that your mindset is still back to kind of that core principle number one, which is optimizing for transfer or optimizing for retrieval. Exactly. So I'm not trying to win the argument of what's faster. Text and email is always going to win that argument. I'm trying to win at optimizing for retrieval. And if you're bought into that, which I hope you are at this point, then you should be comfortable with the idea of taking pause and putting things into that project or into that channel so that it's easy to find. So I would start with optimizing your email. I'd look at how you're doing internal communication. Then I'd start looking into how you're doing task and project management, and just get one thing working at a time.
So that's some quick wins that people could do right now.
Yep.
Is looking at those things and saying, okay, what can I do with this? Because I mean, when I look at email, for me, email's fascinating because I tell my assistants when I'm emailing it, and if it's got more than 3 lines, we can't send it. So it's got to be 2 emails, because I know, invariably, even with my private clients, when I've got to give them detailed responses, it's like, you're not reading past the 3rd line. You looked at the headline, it's below the fold at 3 lines, and then it's like, oh, I didn't see that. It was in the email. It was highlighted. Yeah, but it was below the fold. Okay. Right. So it's not really efficient, actually. It is fast. It is right there, ding, but it's not, will you read it?
Yeah.
So it's not efficient at all, actually, unless it's, and then really at 3 lines, it's a text.
Yeah. So, and if it's rules, if you want this to work on a team level, you have to come up with a framework. And that's, the purpose of my book is my C.P.R. framework. And I give very detailed explanations of how to think about these things, tool agnostic. Doesn't matter if Slack goes out of business or Teams does, or any of these, you still at a theoretical level, break it down. You've got internal communication, external, you've got tasks. And that's going to be true in 100 years from now. You're going to have all those things inside of a company. But what you don't want is to have things based off of preference or subjectivity. Dove, if it's more than 3 lines, he likes it to be a text. But Nick, it's more like 6 lines. And then like John, well, John doesn't matter. So like with John, you could follow the C.P.R. framework. And so with John, you use Slack still. He's fine. He's cool with that. But then Samantha, works hard enough as it is already. You can't start keeping track of personal preferences, like this person likes this doesn't like this. So you have to keep it simple so people can remember it and figure out, okay, this scenario just came up, we're going to put it here, without it, being like a whole discussion. Other ways that people could save time right away without really needing to roll out any new tool is meetings. Meetings is one of the most inefficient time sucks.
Well, that's what I just wanted to talk to you about, meetings, because we all know meetings are important, but not every meeting is important.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's a massive time suck. How do we get around this?
Well, meetings, I read an article in Inc. I think it was in Inc. I think it was like, I don't know, it was like close to like 40 billion plus or minus in wasted productivity in inefficient meetings last year. Don't quote me on the exact number. I think it was around that, and I'm pretty sure it was Inc. It might have been another publication. Meetings are necessary. We can't get around them. Right. But the way that meetings are currently happening, what we see at Leverage, how meetings happen inside of companies, is totally broken. And so, first of all, you have to acknowledge the cost of a meeting, right? Meetings aren't free, even if it's all employees and they're on a salary. It always has a cost. So say you've got a meeting with a group of 2 people and they make $100,000 a year for easy math, right? People work on average, say around 2,000 hours a year, plus or minus. So that's $50 an hour per person. If those two people do an hour meeting, that's $100 meeting, 50
For two.
each, right? And so when you start thinking about what are the different factors or inputs for cost of a meeting, it's number of people, it's their hourly rate or their salary, which you may or may not know, but are they expensive, not expensive? So it's the length, their hourly rate, the total number of people, right? The frequency of a meeting, like all of these things are your variables that you can lever up or down to to adjust the cost. Another thing that you have to realize is time isn't linear. I know that we've been talking a lot about saving time, but it's not just about saving time, it's about optimizing time. So when I say time isn't linear, not every time slot on your calendar is worth the same, right? So it's more like I like to view my calendar like a heat map. And so say your hourly rate is $1,000 an hour. I'm just making up a number. Sure. It's probably higher than that, but I'm just going to give each math. So 1,000 an hour, it's not that 9 a.m. on a Monday is 1,000 and 7 p.m. on a Friday after you've had 100 Zoom calls for the week and you're in the back of an Uber and you're tired and you don't have Wi-Fi and you don't have your laptop in front of you. It's not that 9 a.m. on a Monday is worth 1,000 and 7 o'clock on a Friday is worth 1,000, right? For me, 9 a.m. on a Monday, I just had a relaxing weekend. I woke up, say at 5, I had my workout, my coffee, I meditated, I journaled, I showered. My brain's firing at full horsepower. What I could do at 9 a.m. and at 1 hour could be 10 times more than what I could do in other time slots. That might be worth 10,000 an hour to me versus 7 o'clock on a Friday when I don't have access to everything and I'm tired. Maybe it's worth $50 an hour to me. I don't know. So it's not just about saving time, it's optimizing time. And
yes.
And a lot of times what people discuss in meetings do not need to be live. So you could shorten, oftentimes an hour-long meeting, you might be able to get by with 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And any part of that meeting that was just a report out, right? We've all been there. Have you ever been on a meeting and people are just like sharing screen, talking through slides? It's like, did this need to be during my 9 a.m. high-value time slot?
Right.
Pre-record that, send it to me. When I'm going on a walk on my own time, or I've got, some dead time to fill in, I'll watch it. Maybe I'll even watch it at 2x speed. Maybe you'll say something that I want to think through more and I want to rewatch that. Whatever it is, if you can strip out of the meeting all the stuff that could be done asynchronously, you can shorten a significant amount of meetings and time shift and free up that high value time and now fill in lower value times by watching those meetings. Another thing that you should be thinking about is agendas. We have a policy, no agenda, no meeting. And it will really help you to stay on track. But also back to that principle of your brain is for having ideas, not holding ideas. You don't want to just sit around like, okay, when I talk to David, I want to talk about this, this, and this. But also I don't want to distract you and ping you in Slack or Teams every time I have an idea. So you need a place to dump it where it doesn't distract your colleagues, but also it doesn't, keep your mind cluttered. And an agenda solves all of those different problems.
So that sounds like there would be a bucket of some kind, some technical bucket that we might throw ideas in collectively. And then say, I was thinking about this idea that is X and Y. And I'd really like to flush that out with one person or two people who is up for that, and what's the best time slot that works for us all or for some of us. And then only 2 or 3 people would be on that meeting as opposed to 20 people because the others don't give a shit.
And that's a great example of something that is collaborative. Like when you're in like ideation mode, you want that to be synchronous versus asynchronous. Yeah. If I am running like your marketing and we have a meeting to go over the monthly numbers, right? Instead of that being an hour meeting, let's make it 30. And what I'll do is I'll record my screen, showing a slide deck and the numbers from different charts. Watch it beforehand so we can make the most of the 30 minutes and come with questions.
Right. Nick, this has been a fascinating conversation, and it's definitely made me think about some of the things that I need to look at. So that's good. Always good to learn. Appreciate that very, very much. I'm going to ask you to tell people where they can find out more about you again, if you don't mind. But before I do that, I want to ask you, what do you want said at your eulogy? What do you want people to say about Nick? As the, I know that we tend to eulogize the dead in a way of canonizing them and turning them into saints, but what would you really like them to say about you at a level of impact?
I think on a personal level, that there is really no one like me, and that I'd like to hope that people view me as very unique. And, I'd like to be known for helping be kind of the pioneer in this space of team and organizational efficiency, and having an impact of saving millions and millions of hours of people's time. I think time is a valuable asset. So if I can be known for giving back the gift of millions of hours, then I'll feel good about the impact I've made.
And let's face it, that's something we're all struggling with every single day. So That's great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Please tell everybody where they can find out more about you and about all the wonderful things you offer.
So if you're into this content, definitely check out my book, and you can go to comeupforair.com to find where to buy the book, but also a bunch of free resources. HarperCollins was my publisher, and the book is 320 pages long. There's no fluff. It's just a ton of content and practical ways of implementing all these things and frameworks. And I'm efficient. So, had I not been, this would have been like a 1,400 page book. And they didn't want it any longer than the 320. So what I had to do was I had to say throughout the book, if you want to see the playbook for this, the calculator for this, the additional resources, go and check out the website. So we spent a ton of time building out a bunch of additional resources that complement the book. At comeupforair.com. If you want further help, we've got a ton of different training programs at getleverage.com. If you need help with your getting to inbox zero, rolling out or training on Slack, Microsoft Teams, Asana, so on and so forth. And then I just launched a really fun podcast you should check out with our good friend, Jay Abraham, where we're doing these hot seats, and we will get a business on and do a recorded consultation where we unlock potential to either make more money or save more time.
Beautiful. Fantastic. And again, of course, we will make sure that we post all of those links into the show notes so you can just read them and know where to click. I hope that you've enjoyed today's show and really challenged you to think about things in a different way. Nick, I really want to thank you for everything that you shared with us. It's been a delicious conversation. Thank you so much. And for you to listen, remember that those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of that tribe. Business and political leaders committed to positively shaping the landscape know that they've got to tap into human behavior. You can tap into the most groundbreaking understanding of this by applying the anatomy of meaning extracted from the emotional source code. I'm Dov Baron, and I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified actualized meaning is the single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness in individuals and in companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. It really does help that you hit that subscribe button. It makes a huge difference. And share the show with others, because we're not about hoarding the information. We're about expanding it and letting other people have the insights from today's show. If you've gained a lot from today, we'd love you to write to us, tell us what you got out of it. And I'm sure Nick would love to hear from you, as would I. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the efficiencies and the effectiveness of what it is you're doing, because you can come up for air. Grab the book and walk yourself through the processes. Remember, it's just one step at a time. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you, tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.